Welcome back to From the Shed End. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. First of all, Theo, how you doing?
I'm good. Literally, before we started to record this, I just told you I'm starting to get into the Christmas mood because usually I'm a bit of a Grinch. I saw your background with the Christmas tree. Mine's an absolute mess with loads of boxes of Christmas decorations and wrapping paper. But yeah, now that I'm back in London, I've settled back in. A lot of decorations. We called it the 12 pubs of Christmas over the weekend. And we did a little pub crawl around central London with my friends, and that definitely got me into the Christmas mood. And left the office for the last time yesterday until January, which is always a nice feeling.
It's a bonus.
So yeah, all good. Looking forward to the football. I'm glad we made it into the semis of the Carabao Cup on Tuesday night. But how are you doing?
I'm good. This is not a Bailey's coffee, by the way. This is normal coffee. I wish it was a Bailey's coffee, but no, I'm good. Like yourself, getting ready for what seems to be, as I'm reminded in this house every single day, that it is almost Christmas Day. So no, I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, busy couple of days coming up. A lot of football as well. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to actually just relaxing, just enjoying a bit of time off. And yeah, as you know, been watching Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Season 2. You've been pressed Season 2, Episode 1 already. So...
Oof.
Yeah.
You've gone through season 1 quite quickly. Yeah,
I started on the Monday, I think, maybe Monday night. So, yeah, I've done well. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, it only gets better, which is good. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to that. So, yeah, that's just a side note. But back to the football. A lot of football to talk about. If you're new as part of the channel, then make sure you're subscribing. If you're here as part of the live stream, whilst we're recording this live, make sure you get involved in the chat as well. But Theo, you went to the Paul Canoville Foundation, where we got to see, if you've been on our Instagram, you came home with a very good prize from the auction. What was it like there? What was it? Just give us a bit of a rundown on your evening.
Yeah, it was a nice evening. It was all organised by the Paul Canoville Foundation, and for maybe our younger viewers who aren't too familiar with who Paul Canoville is, he was Chelsea's first black player. He made his debut in 1982. But he kind of has quite a poignant part in Chelsea's history because he actually faced extreme racism from opposition fans, but actually even his own fans, that were attending matches at Stamford Bridge. But he persevered and became quite a vital part of our team. Post his career, he still faced a lot of issues, addiction and kind of recovery. But his story is quite central to Chelsea's history, and not just from a football perspective, but kind of how we progressed as a society from the 80s up to now. And he's now got a foundation called the Paul Canoville Foundation, which focuses on such things as education to kind of combat racism, discrimination, and inclusion. A lot of youth mentoring. So they were mentioning yesterday that they've been touring the country, and especially kind of giving opportunities to disadvantaged children. They've been going to different schools across London, Nottingham, and other cities, tackling bullying and encouraging resilience. So a lot of community outreach across the capital and beyond the country as well. And he also works in collaboration with Chelsea FC and features quite regularly in a lot of anti-racism events around the club. So yeah, the event was held at Stamford Bridge in the Paul Canoville suite. It was actually my first time in the Paul Canoville suite, which is just behind the shed, actually, with a nice view of Stamford Bridge when you come out the suite. Christmas theme, so we had a 3-course meal, Christmas turkey, obviously pigs in blanket, Brussels sprouts, the lot. And then kind of to raise money for the foundation, there was a raffle, there was an auction, a lot of cool kits up for grabs. We're talking Eden Hazard signed shirts, Frank Lampard signed shirts, Cole Palmer,
I think
Joel
there was a
Cole
Zola
from
one.
Maluda.
Zola.
There was a Gianfranco Zola one, Solomon Kalou, Ashley Cole in England, Ashley Cole kit. A lot of cool prizes, not just kits as well. A lot of like Chelsea goodies. And I just thought, as I started to have a few glasses of red wine, I thought I'd maybe I did buy a few raffle tickets.
You did look a bit hazy in some of those photos. I'm not gonna. You could tell there was a couple of red wines in.
I think it was the glare from like the infrared lighting that was on the pitch. It wasn't the red wine, I can assure you. But yeah, I thought it is Christmas. I'll treat myself. I wasn't successful in the raffle, so I did bid for a Esteval Willian signed shirt from this season. I thought to myself, I went to his home back in April in Sao Paulo. I got the Palmeiras shirt at this time. It's time now to get his name on a Chelsea shirt, and on top of that, it's signed. And I think after my 4th glass of red wine, I thought to myself, and plus that shirt's going to increase in value. He's only getting better and better. He's only 18. So yeah, I did end up winning it, which was quite nice. I'm not going to say how much the final bid was. I'll keep that to myself. Even my parents don't know yet. But maybe I'll just wrap it up and put it under the tree as to make myself feel a bit better. But yeah, won it, which was really nice. So nice little goodie to take home. And overall, it was just a really nice evening. Got to, Pat Nevin was there as well. A lot of former players, Ken Munku as well. They was sharing their stories. So yeah, good evening. Got to hear from a lot of former Chelsea players. Got to interact with a few other Chelsea fans, and actually quite a nice story. There were 2 Chelsea fans on my table who didn't know each other before the night. And we were all talking about our first ever Chelsea match. And they both mentioned that they were at the same match. It was Chelsea Crystal Palace 2-0 win for Chelsea in 1972, April 1972. And they both found out that their first ever Chelsea match was the same one. Whether they were sat next to each other or not.
Sat next to each other.
Yeah. But it definitely made me feel young hearing their first game was in 1972, and I think mine was in 2008. So yeah, overall, really nice evening. And like I said at the start, it definitely got me into the Christmas mood, and it's all for a good cause as well. So if you're not familiar with the Paul Canoville Foundation, who Paul Canoville is, I definitely recommend checking it out. We'll be posting a bit more about them in 2026, I'm sure. But yeah, really good evening, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, and we'll definitely put a link to the foundation in the chat as well, so anyone who wants to get more information, they can. I mean, it's definitely, I echo what you said, it's definitely something that I think, more so for Chelsea fans that, like you said, may not even know who Paul is, or the story that he's gone through, the trials and tribulations that he's had to face throughout his time, not just as a Chelsea player, but as just a man and a black man in football as well. So I think there's a lot to unpick there. Very interesting character. So definitely put the link in there for anyone who's interested as well. But good night as well, obviously, at Esteval and Maresca. We'll talk about Esteval later on, because I don't know if you got to hear the press conference this morning, but I was thinking, where's Esteval? Because he said, Maresca said about Dario Sugo and Liam Delap potentially will be back for the Villa game, but he didn't mention Esteval. There has been a correction. He did mean Esteval, not Dario Sugo. So I was a bit sort of wondering what that means. But let's go keep on the Brazil theme, because we know that Thiago Silva has officially terminated his contract with Fluminense, which I think will probably hurt a lot of the Fluminense fans, because of course he's going back to his boyhood club. It feels like Thiago Silva wants to try and have one last throw at the dice at the World Cup. He's 41 years of age at the moment, so this will be this ultimate, the last chance saloon for him at the World Cup. What do you think about, first of all, the decision to leave Brazil and come back to potentially a club in Europe? And the second question, which I'm going to ask anyway, is do you see him coming back to Chelsea, or is the links which we're hearing about him going to AC Milan, they seem to be picking up a bit of pace now? Can you see him ever coming back to Chelsea?
I do see him coming back to Chelsea. I don't know in what kind of capacity, whether it's a coach, a player, a technical director, whatever it could be. But his second stint at Fluminense was fairly bittersweet. He came in, I think, halfway through their season and actually helped them avoid the drop and save them from relegation. And in his second season, I think it was a bit of a disappointing start. Things definitely turned around towards the end of the season. And I was there when he scored in the final league game of the season at the Maracanã a couple of weeks ago. But I think it ended a bit in sadness and a bit of a sour note, because they got knocked out of the semi-finals of the Brazilian Cup. And also the fact he has terminated his contract, maybe a few Fluminense fans feel like they feel a bit betrayed by that, and especially that he's going back to Europe. But I think the main factor why he's going back to Europe is to be closer to his family. I think his family still all reside in London, in Cobham, I believe. His son's now in the Chelsea Academy. He just got a scholarship, and he's going to be in the play for, I think, the under 16s, if I'm not mistaken. Where he plays in Europe, I think you mentioned AC Milan. I think he definitely has a lot of sentimental kind of affection for the clubs that he played in the past, which are, I think, Porto, AC Milan, PSG, and obviously Chelsea. So I definitely feel like he could potentially return to one of those clubs. PSG and Chelsea, I think, quite unlikely. given I think their centre backs are quite cemented, and more so Chelsea, given how the ownership feel about all the players. I think since the Raheem Sterling, Koulibaly, and Aubameyang kind of transfers, it's been quite apparent now that we're targeting players on longer top contracts who are a lot younger, and maybe their value will just continue to increase. So I personally can't see him coming back to Chelsea as a player, even if it's just for 6 months. I would absolutely adore to see him come back to Chelsea. And even if he doesn't, maybe just plays the odd game, just how he can maybe be that father figure, or that kind of mentor for the likes of a Colwill, a Chalobah, still potentially even like a Gusto, who would have had a chance probably to play with him now that he's really back in the team. And then probably a couple of the younger guys that are probably around Stamford Bridge now as well at Cobham, like Tyree George, or Champong, Reggie Walsh, if he gets a few more minutes this season. But yeah, I feel like he'll definitely be back at Chelsea. But I think it will be post-retirement, unfortunately. And one thing I will say is I would absolutely love to see him at the World Cup in 2026. Because I think, personally, when I watched him in Brazil, he's still got it in him. And I feel like Brazil's centre-backs aren't really kind of set in stone. You've got Militao, you've got Gabriel, you've got Marquinhos, you've got potentially Thiago Silva. And I do feel like Thiago Silva's maybe outperformed Marquinhos and Militao at times in the last few years as well.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think there's a small possibility. I still think there is a possibility he can come back to Chelsea. I agree with you in terms of the structure of how the team is, the profile of players that we've signed. The fact if we don't move on Badiashile, if we don't move on Dizazi, which we hopefully will, but we still, you've got Levi Colwell, who potentially will be back at the back end of this season. I know it's very unrealistic to think that, but he could, be ahead of schedule and actually get some minutes before the season ends. So I do think there'll be a number of players ahead of him. I just think in terms of the mentality of what Thiago Silva can bring you off the field more so than on it. And I think for someone like Thiago Silva, the experience that he could bring to even someone like Wesley Fofana, who we probably deem as, one of the more experienced players in the back line, or even a Tosin, the vast amount of wealth in terms of experience that Thiago Silva can bring to a club, any club, even in like a player coach capacity, which I think would be ideally for me the solution. Bring him in as a player coach. He did come out the other day, I think, and said his aim is to at least coach or manage every club he's been to. So why not start with us? I think it would be it would be for me the dream. Obviously, you said his son's there now as part of the scholarship. He's part of the under 17s or under 16s that he's playing for now. It makes sense to me, and I would love to see him back at Chelsea. If he was to come back to Chelsea, because I think obviously there is still that chance that he can. What impact do you think he would have on the current defenders that we have, and how would we utilise him if he was to be a player coach?
Huge impact, I believe. I feel like, especially if we are to progress quite far into the Champions League in the new year, potentially a good FA Cup run, he's the type of person who knows all about these knockout competitions. He was with us in 2021, or he went from the group stage all the way to the final in Porto and won it. He helped us win big trophies like the Club World Cup and the Super Cup as well. So I think even if it's just having him in the dressing room, I think he'll have a huge impact on not just the younger players, but also people potentially like a Caicedo, like they're still young players, but I guess they're not as young as maybe some of the other ones. But yeah, I think his impact and just his kind of how vocal he can be, and that kind of leadership aspect we've spoken about for the last 3 years that we've really lacked, will be really apparent, I feel. So 6 months, I just feel like it could be a risk worth taking. And we said it was a big risk when we signed him in 2020 when Lampard got him as a free agent from PSG, given his age and how he was PSG were reluctant to renew his contract, and that was probably the biggest risk that's paid off in probably in Chelsea's history, almost, I'd say. So probably the Abramovich era at least. I feel like it could be nice to see, but I think after we initially said about him being linked to Milan, I feel like that's probably the more likely option for him at this stage, and given the structure of our recruitment system as well.
And I think as well, it's not too far to travel, get on a plane back from Milan to London, London to Milan. It's feasible. Yeah. So I think, you sort of opens this part of the podcast with, he wants to be back closer to his family. That would be the ideal thing for him, is to be playing somewhere that is within a good, relatively good distance from where his family are. So, but as a Chelsea fan, I have to say and end this part that I do want to see him back at Chelsea, because I think even if it's just, I don't know if you remember, I can't remember what game it was. I feel like it was a Champions League game, if you remember, and he was on the touchline, he was in the stands. I don't think he was even playing, and he was almost like the third coach. I feel like it was
Atletico Madrid. It was him, Jorginho. Jorginho, and
Mount?
And
it was Mount.
I think they were either injured or suspended.
Yeah,
and I
that's
think
it.
Emerson scores the goal that basically got us into the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
And the three of them are just like
it's the celebrations in the so it shows you the impact someone can have. And sometimes it's not just about what someone can do on the field, it's the mentality of the player off the field and how he installs and embeds that into other players. And I think for us, knowing that we've got, Achiampong, like you said, even Fofana, Chalobah, if we keep him, those are three centre-backs that would honestly learn within the space of 6 months how much has Chalobah learned as well, probably being under his wing already. So just think about what Fofana could do as well. I won't include Zazie in there for obvious reasons, but we are where we are with him. But let's see how that unfolds. I personally think a decision will be made very soon. So let's hope. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Let's see how that one unfolds. Let's move over to Cardiff. I had to wake myself up for the first 45 minutes of that game, but it was 3-1 in the end. It was a victory from the League One leaders, who are flying high in League One, doing really well. Did a preview of the game. Game of two halves, as they say, good old cliche. But what was your thoughts, Theo, on the game in terms of the first half, the second half? 11 changes made by Maresca. Was that the right choice to make in hindsight?
I mean, we were criticising kind of Maresca's tactics on our previous recording, I think, saying he rotates too much. But sometimes in this congested Christmas period, you don't have a choice. And we saw it against Lincoln. It was kind of touch and go at times with the rotations. But in this game, I feel like the rotations paid off to a certain extent. That being said, we did need to rely on the substitutes and the top guns to in the second half to kind of get the job done in Garnacho and Pedro Neto. The first half, there wasn't much in it. I feel there was that maybe Mark Gui chance kind of near post. And then I think there was that Jorgensen save from the deflected shot that Cardiff had. But in the second half, I feel like we started off with a bit more intensity and scored the first goal from Garnacho. Sure, it was a defensive mistake from Cardiff giving the ball away. I liked how we pressed straight after that goal. But it could have easily kind of, when they scored the equaliser, that could have almost kind of gone to penalties. And I was thinking to myself, why did we not take any of those chances after scoring that first goal? I think João Pedro just way too complacent when he's got the ball in the box, almost, trying to find like the perfect kind of gap or trying to dribble that last player. Just shoot. We're not winning 5-0, like I said before. It's 1-1 at this, or 1-0 only. But yeah, credit to Pedro Neto and Garnacho coming on, getting the job done, and probably also proving to Maresca that we're still, the main guys ahead of maybe a Tyreek George or a Jamie Gittins, who for me just didn't take their chance on Tuesday night. But yeah, I think taking everything into account, you play Lincoln, Wolves, a very struggling Wolves, and a League One team. Sure, they're doing really well in League One, Cardiff City, but we should be beating them. So I think it's not a real surprise that we're in the semi-finals, if I'm completely honest.
Yeah, I agree. I'll be honest though, I did think we were going to struggle. Just 11 changes is a lot of changes to make. Whether you're playing League One or you're playing National League or Premier League opposition, I still think to try and change your entire squad, it's a gamble. It can go well, it can go wrong, it can work for you. I mean, I said after the game, I think I did a review of the game, and I said I feel like this is Maresca's message maybe to the sporting directors and the owners, that some of these players maybe not, they're not Maresca signings, and also they're not what he needs in terms of the fit of the profile to play his style of play. And I feel like that's what he's trying to get from some of these. I mean, Tyreek George has kind of been frozen out for a while. He hasn't really played as much football. Same for Josh Achiampong, who I thought was absolutely, he was probably the man of the match for me. I know he made maybe one or two mistakes, especially with the first half. I think he was quite lucky that he had Caicedo that was sort of behind him and could just mop up any mistakes. But I thought Achiampong solid, calm, cool on the ball, progresses it forward really well, recovers the ball as well. It was a good performance from him, but then I have to look at Jorgensen, who I thought, yes, he pulled off some good saves, but you could tell still not good with his feet, distribution-wise.
Spilled the ball a few times as well, I felt.
Spilled the ball, yeah. I think there was one occasion where And I think they picked up on it on commentary where, you know, the goalkeepers like to almost let the ball, catch it and let it bounce and then catch it again. And it was almost a bit, you know, you just can't make those silly mistakes. So João Heto, I thought, I don't want to say he had a bad game. I thought he had a quiet game. I thought he just had a game where you kind of go missing in and amongst the game. You're not really affecting it, but you're doing your job that you need to when you're called upon. And I expected a little bit more from him because we haven't really seen enough of João Heto, and I don't know if it's because obviously he's not been playing, but when he's been given opportunities, he doesn't really leave a memory in your mind where you think actually, you know, he's going to give Cucurella some competition. Do you feel like he's just got, you know, not getting a minute, so we're not seeing the best of him, and obviously the confidence has probably been reduced?
Yeah, I feel like his performance kind of went under the radar. It wasn't nothing out of the extraordinary, and he has had limited minutes, so it's quite hard to impress when you're not really given an opportunity. And even in the Champions League at times, it has been Cucurella who has started. But with Hato, I'm just remembering back to that Brentford game back in September, well, I think he got the nod to start it, and he did look really, really shaky in it. Yeah. He's still very, very young. We have to remember that. I think he's only 20 or 19 even. But yeah, I feel like he's got a lot to improve on. But right now, he just hasn't done enough for me to dislodge Cucurella from that starting left back spot.
Yeah, I mean, he came from a really good squad. You know, he came from a really, you know, of this sort of high profile, you know, one of the best left backs in Dutch football. Can play left centre back as well. And I just didn't really, maybe you're right, we haven't seen enough of him. So, you know, small sample size, he's going to look really bad. But I just think even in those games you're playing up against League One opposition, you know, I expected a little bit more from you. And I also think as well, that's potentially why, you know, Maresca's maybe seen these things on the training grounds. Maybe he's seen that there's something that he doesn't really like. And he's always said, Maresca, if you're not playing well, if you're not training well, then the opportunities aren't going to come as quick and fast as you'd like them to. And maybe that's why you're not seeing the likes of Tariq George get minutes. We have to talk about Buonanotte, who for me, I question it every time I see him play. Why have you got him in the team? For me, he looked good for like 5 or 10 minutes and then just muscled off the ball, too many touches on the ball, very similar to what you said about João Pedro, trying to find the most cute, you know, brilliant pass or the angle, and he just take a punt, have a go at taking the goalkeeper from any angle and just seeing if it goes in. But what was your thoughts on Buonanotte? It seems a lot of Chelsea fans were questioning his starting position in the lineup on Tuesday.
Yeah, I feel like a player you almost forget sometimes he's part of the squad. He hasn't even been able to make the bench at times in our Premier League matchday squads. And if I'm completely honest, probably a season where it's becoming even more kind of apparent now that we're halfway through December, like, could we have done without Buonanotte? And I think the answer is yes. We have enough depth in terms of Enzo Fernandez, who can play as a 10, Cole Palmer, Estevao. So yeah, it's a bit of a confusing one. And I think there's a high chance potentially in January that loan is terminated, or maybe, I don't know if he's able to play if he ever played minutes for Brighton, or maybe we kind of talk to Brighton and tell them he's going to go to Strasbourg instead of Chelsea, or Brighton recall him and do what they need to do with him. But yeah, I think from what I've seen this so far this season, if he does stay at Chelsea till the end of the season, I think it's highly unlikely we make the move permanent.
I just don't see it. I don't see it. No. I don't know why we've even got him in the team, because I think it sounds really harsh, but you know, the loan deal doesn't make any sense. You know, there's no option to buy. There's no mandatory to buy. There's no, you know, there's just nothing that's positive about this loan deal. And it's almost like you're training a player to then send him back to Brighton to improve Brighton's squad. I think the best solution, bearing in mind Andre Santos could probably play in that 10 role as well, for being honest, would be to allow Brighton to recall him and find another deal for him that works, because he's a young player, very talented player as well. And I think you're just almost stumping the progression of a player that, with a World Cup coming up, you know, he's probably going to want to try and get it, you know, very hard to get into it, but you'll want to try and give himself the best opportunity, surely, to get into that Argentinian squad. I just don't understand it. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
It's clear and obvious now that he wasn't signed by Maresca, but he was either the technical director or the kind of hierarchy that kind of decided they wanted to add him to the squad, bolster our options, maybe develop him in the hope that he'd become a big talent so they could sign him next summer. But yeah, I feel like given his limited minutes, given that he hasn't even featured in matchday squads, I think Maresca is kind of showcasing to the board that these players aren't my players. These aren't the players that I wanted to sign. But yeah, very, very confusing loan deal. I think out of all the loan deals we made, I'm talking like Falcao, Zakaria, Alexandra Pato. I think this one's up there with the most bizarre and strange one we've ever conducted.
Yeah, if we were going to do a ranking of loans again at any time, I think Juan Anate is definitely in the very top ranking. Whatever the tier is at the top, he's going to be in that one because it doesn't make any sense. And, you know, it's unfortunate for the player because I think maybe he's come here with, you know, false hope or false promises, and it hasn't materialized in the way that he thought it would be. If you remember when we signed him, he was saying about, you know, I can't wait to play in the Champions League. And originally we didn't even include him in the squad. So it sounds like a sporting director, you know, Paul Winstanley sort of signing, and Maresca's just gone on board with it, but it clearly hasn't worked out. Let's talk about the semi-finals, because we know as it stands now, I think we either play Arsenal or Crystal Palace. I think their game's on the 23rd, which is next Tuesday, I think, as we're recording this. Very good memory there, considering I've only had one coffee today. But Arsenal or Crystal Palace next week will determine who we play in the semi-finals. A two-legged tie in the League Cup semi-finals. Probably an obvious question. I'm going to ask it anyway. But who do you fancy out of those two teams to play? It's actually not that hard. It's a very hard question. I was thinking about this the other night. But who would you prefer to see us play over a two-legged tie?
It is a hard question. I completely agree. But I think for me, it's still Crystal Palace. I think Glasner's kind of come out recently and said how he's really struggling with the depth in his team. He's not happy with the lack of signings that they made in the summer, and that's become apparent and obvious when they've dropped points recently in Europe. I think they drew yesterday in the Conference League, if I'm not mistaken. So it seems like they're struggling. They're struggling to kind of have these midweek fixtures. I don't think if there's there won't be any Conference League, I think, in January, February for Crystal Palace when these games will be played. But still, I feel like Arsenal, especially now that they're getting a lot of their injured players back, like Kai Havertz, I just read he's back in training or on the verge of kind of making a comeback.
He's back out again.
Yeah. Out injured or out back in,
he's back
training?
He's back out injured again, yep.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
okay.
Relapse in his injuries, so he's out.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, he's not a player, so I'm not going to talk about that. But I'd rather not talk about him. But yeah, I think it's Crystal Palace. And I remember when we played Arsenal, I think in the semi-finals of the League Cup, it was in 2017-18. And I think it was like a 0-0, and then they beat us 2-1 at the Emirates. So yeah, but that being said, we do seem to always up our game against these bigger teams. So
this is why it's a difficult question.
That Arsenal performance against them in at Stamford Bridge a few weeks ago is still in my memory. We did well against the likes of Liverpool, against Manchester, against Barcelona. So yeah, it's a tough one. But what I always say is the team that wins is the team that deserves to be in the semis. So there's not really a preferred one.
True.
Yeah, but yeah, I think I'll be watching that game next week, and it's going to be a London derby, so should be a good one. And then other semi-finals. Man City, Newcastle. I was actually thinking I'd rather play Newcastle out of all the teams, given their kind of mini injury crisis right now, and I feel like they're kind of they've gone down a bit of a blip, I feel, but yeah, I think all these teams are kind of the quality you'd expect from a League Cup semi-final matchup.
Yeah, I think Arsenal at some point, and I think I said this maybe in one of the live streams I've done this week. I think at some point they're going to have to decide, do they want to chase that Premier League, or do they want to try and get a trophy that isn't the Premier League? Because City currently, as we're recording this, are 2 points behind them in the league. Now, if that gap closes or they extend the gap a little bit, they're still going to have to rotate. They're going to have to try and keep some of their players from not picking up any more injuries. Obviously, Jesus is coming back. But I would rather play Arsenal. I just think Crystal Palace have a way of I don't know. They just have a way. We've seen it last season when they won their trophy, but I just feel they've got a way of, when it comes to big teams, when it comes to these moments where they have to just find another level, they do find it. I don't think Arsenal, at that point in the season when we played them, I can't remember when the ties are. I think they're January, February, aren't they? I think end of Jan, start of Feb. At that point in the season, it could be make or break for Arsenal in terms of the league. You know, do they have to focus their attention on that? And if they do, I think they'll heavily rotate that squad. If we were to play them in a semi-final, it'd still be a difficult game, but I think I'd fancy my chances against Arsenal as opposed to a Crystal Palace team. Like you said, no Conference League, I don't think, in that period of time as well. They always find another level. And now Oliver Glaston's done amazing stuff with Crystal Palace. So, I have to credit him there as well. They're currently fifth in the league. I did not know that. They're currently fifth in the league.
2 points behind us, I think.
2 points behind us, you're right. Yeah. So we'll preview our game against Newcastle later on. I do think it's important. I want to touch on Maresca because Maresca's been in the spotlight. I can't remember if we spoke about Maresca since the comments after the Everton game. I feel like we didn't, or maybe we did. A lot has happened in the last 7 days, to be fair, hasn't it? I think he obviously came out, for anyone that doesn't know, he came out and said that the last 48 hours, this was after the 2-0 win against Everton, were the worst 48 hours of his time as Chelsea manager. Very sort of cloak and daggers in terms of what he meant by that. He said that the team haven't been fully supported. So he did then go on to say that it's not actually directed towards fans. You know, the fans actually applauded him and chanted his name after the Cardiff game as well. So the relationship with Maresca fans seems fine. It feels this is more geared towards ownership, sporting directors, people around that sort of board level at Chelsea at the moment. He has also gone on to say now we've got links that he might be the front runner for the Man City job if and when Pep Guardiola does decide to leave Manchester City. It feels very much strategic in terms of all of these comments and, you know, briefings that are coming out at the moment. What's your thoughts on all of it the last 7 days from Maresca? Has he handled it in the right way, or could he have done this a bit more diplomatic and maybe had some of these conversations, you know, at Cobb and behind closed doors?
I feel like it's been a bit. I feel I need a timeline to kind of organise all these events. But yeah, I feel like as a manager, sometimes now your frustration and kind of understanding, kind of your sentiment does need to be voiced out sometimes in post matches or pre-match conferences. Initially, when he said it was the worst 48 hours, I thought that was directed towards the fans because that was at the at the back of the defeat against Atalanta, where a lot of people were criticising him for rotating too much, for his tactics, and Leeds and Bournemouth and these kinds of substitutions he was making. But like you said, it was more geared towards maybe the ownership and the board of directors. He did get asked today if he'll be Chelsea manager next season. And his answer was, yes, absolutely. I have a contract until June 2029. But
he can't
of course
say
he'll
no
say
there,
that.
can he?
Yeah, of course he'll say that. I mean, we've heard this from like Conte and Mourinho in the past, and then they're gone within a month. And the links to City make sense. He was I think Guardiola's assistant or second man at one stage as well, or he was in charge of the youth setup there at Manchester City, and he's worked with Lavia, Palmer, Delap, and these players prior to joining Chelsea. But I think he's handled it quite well. I think everything he's done since joining Chelsea he's handled quite well. I said it a few times. I'm still not 100% sure he is what we need for the coming seasons and the coming years ahead. But I think given the very tough job that he's been put in, given how difficult it is to work with these directors and owners that are very micromanaging from what I'm hearing, especially Egbali, then I think he's done a very good job. But I think it's nice as well to see, because a lot of the managers we've had before, even Lampard to a certain extent and Graham Potter, they have been yes men. They've always said yes to what the owners have told them. And now Maresca finally seems like he's standing up towards them. And it's giving me a bit of like Conte vibes when, you know, he's not happy with something and he'll speak his mind and he'll almost have a bit of a temper. But what I don't want this is to escalate to a point where he gets us top four, he gets us a trophy, but then he's still gone in the summer. Because I've said it a few times, we haven't had a manager under this Bowley ownership that stayed for more than a season. So it's nice now that Maresca's been here for a year and a half, but it'd be nice as well to have him at Chelsea for a third pre-season and to really be able to build on the momentum that we've created and the cohesion as a team we've created over the past 2 seasons as well. Because it almost feels like every time we get a new manager, sometimes you do get a new manager bounce, you do get that feel-good factor, but it also is a bit of a setback. The manager has to kind of learn the players' behaviors, both as players and as kind of personalities off the pitch as well. So there's so much that's involved. But but yeah, it's a bit weird, and I think it's definitely not the end to this as well. I think there'll be more kind of these little how do you say it, like kind of cryptic quotes, I'd say, that will come from press conferences, from Maresca, from the football world as well. So I almost want to say stay tuned.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, as I said, I think this is very timed. I think it's timed very much like other players have come out recently, looking at Liverpool, Mo Salah. I think there's always an ulterior motive to when managers, and some of it is probably just passion, but it felt like with Maresca and maybe with other players as well, it's built up frustration over a period of time. And, you know, when you're a manager, I'm sure you're taking a lot of flack, you're taking a lot of things, you know, you're almost getting the stick being beaten over you, and actually it should be amongst either other people in the club as well, and it feels like you're the scapegoat for a lot of things. So look, I mean, he's got a lot of leverage. I think if you think back to the fact that if Man City are genuine in their interest in him, you know, this is a manager now that can actually probably openly speak about certain things, because he knows if that is true, that Man City do want him, then he's got a safety net behind him. You know, you can fall back and say, actually, I'm going to say what I want to say, or you need to now actually back me in this transfer window, or I'm off. You know, I'm going to the Etihad because, you know, there's a job there waiting for me. They want me. I don't think if he had that safety net, he'd probably be, I don't say he wouldn't be talking as openly as he was, because, you know, we know Italians are quite like that. The direct, they tell you how it is. But I do question why now. You know, he's been here for a while. I'm sure he's felt these frustrations for a number of months, maybe. Is it because the transfer window's opening and he actually wants to bring in the right profile of players that he wants? So I'm not sure. But if the rumours are true, we've been linked with Oliver Glasner, who we've just spoken about, Liam Rosina from Strasbourg as well, another one. So apparently they're buttering him up. They're don't want to use the word grooming, but they're almost grooming him to you know, become the Chelsea manager, because that seems what the next step is for him. So I would probably be against a lot of that. I think I agree with you. I think for me, Maresca, first season, top four, you know, got us the Conference League, Club World Cup. Let's progress on that and let's try and build a squad for him for the future.
Absolutely, and we're still in all four competitions. We're competing and we're still in the running. I mean, I wouldn't say we're in a title race yet, but there's still a chance we could kind of push for top four, stay within top four. We're in the semi-finals of the League Cup. FA Cup starts away to Charlton in January, and we're most likely going to make it to the knockouts of the Champions League. So yeah, I think like you correctly said, it's almost like he's got a safety net. He's maybe playing on these rumours or these links to kind of maybe speak his mind and kind of see how the ownership reacts. And hopefully, if they do react, it'll be in a positive way for him. He'll get maybe the backing he needs in January or next summer. But yeah, I feel like it's definitely been a bit of a weird week with all these Maresca kind of rumours and quotes.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I can't remember the last time a Chelsea manager went to another direct, which we have to say City are a direct rival. I can't remember the last time that ever happened.
Straight after Chelsea, are we saying? Or
after Chelsea. Yeah. I can't remember.
I mean, Mourinho, I think there was like a little break before he went to United, I think.
But I don't think there's been one where it's directly from Chelsea to City, Liverpool, Arsenal, United. I generally can't remember the last time that ever happened. So I think if that was to happen, it would leave a massive... Because a lot of Chelsea fans have backed Maresca, even when we don't understand the madness, you know, the methods of the madness that he does on the pitch or whatever, and we still back him. So I think if he was to do that, directly move there, the Etihad or Stamford Bridge when Man City return would be a very hostile game, 100%.
Absolutely, yeah. I feel like we're slowly creating this rivalry with Man City based on a lot of events that have happened, and particularly after that Champions League final, whereas before it used to be a team that we would never kind of put in the same bracket as Arsenal, Tottenham or Liverpool.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's one to watch, like you said. I think it's not the end of the Maresca saga as we know it. But let us know your thoughts in the comments, what you think about Maresca. Should he stay? Will he stay? And do you want him to be backed in the transfer window in January as well? Now, we need to talk about our previous owner, Roman Abramovich, who, again, if you've been involved in the news this week, you'll know that the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has issued a stark warning to the former owner early this week, stating that the clock is ticking and he's demanding he transfers the £2.5 billion that was part of the proceeds of the sale of Chelsea Football Club for humanitarian fund for the Ukraine war victims, or he can face legal action from the UK government. Now, there's a lot to unpick in this, and I think we could spend probably the next 2-3 hours talking about this. But from obviously, I know you're sort of tuned into stuff as well. So, what's your thoughts on all of it? I mean, it seems very much something that we know has been bubbling away in the background. We don't talk about it every week as Chelsea fans, but we know it's there. What's your thoughts on all of it, really? I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, it's just mental that this is like the Prime Minister of the UK kind of issuing a warning to a former owner of a football club, and the government obviously wants the money to be used for humanitarian aid, as you correctly pointed out. But Roman Abramovich is insisting that it should be used for all the victims of the war, meaning that also the Russians could also benefit. And the reminder that this 2.5 billion is the money that he received from the sale of the club, which right now, if I'm not mistaken, it's not even with Abramovich. It's somewhere locked up in a vault or with the government of the UK. So it's not even sitting with Abramovich, but maybe they still need him to like sign it off. Yeah. But yeah, I just feel like Abramovich is very, very powerless right now. He doesn't really have a say. We know that he's very kind of media shy. He doesn't do a lot for attention in terms of the media. He never did interviews with Chelsea. So I think he's probably handling this probably with a big team of people. But yeah, it's crazy that it's gotten to this stage now where the Prime Minister of the UK is issuing like a threat or like a stark warning, as you said. But yeah, what are your thoughts on how this has escalated to this stage?
I think the first thing to say is probably we know that Roman Abramovich, yes, he's done a lot of good things, but he's also probably done some things that we don't agree with. I think that's the best thing to sum up that, because I think if we do this part of the podcast, I can already see tweets already or someone commenting saying that, he's done a number of bad things. I don't think anyone's trying to disprove that or say that he hasn't done that, because we know that, he's acquired money from somewhere. Maybe if some of it isn't legitimate, we get that. But I think for the point in question, which we're talking about on this podcast, which is about should the UK government be able to
handle his money, I'd say.
His money, well, seizure of assets, which, okay, fair enough. But I think the rationale for the seizure of the asset of the Chelsea Football Club for me was just didn't really understand that, if I'm being honest. I don't think that really made much sense. But then to handle the funds and then to have the funds for so long, I mean, this stark warning or this demand could have happened months ago, years ago. I almost feel there's again, I'm using that word, ulterior motive. I feel like this is something that, what worries me about all of this is that I don't think the UK government paints himself in a good light with this situation that they've put themselves in. There's going to be victims in Russia. There's going to be victims in Ukraine. And I think Roman Abramovich, for that reason, for me personally, is right in terms of, in any war, there are innocent people that are impacted. So yes, you want to make sure that the money is split. I don't see any issue with that. I generally don't. But I did want to point out that I think it's interesting. During COVID, if you remember, this is a man that he's paid a lot of taxes to the country. He kept Stamford Bridge open, if you remember, during COVID. He's done a lot for this country in terms of paying into the country that now seems to be demanding that he signs £2.5 billion over. I think it's, I don't want to say it's disgusting, because like I said, he's acquired his money from where he's acquired his money from. But I do think it is, in terms of what the UK government are doing, I think it's disgusting, because I think, and the government have to be careful by doing this, because other foreigners who want to try and invest in this country are probably going to be looking at this thinking, actually, what if you're doing that to him, why would I want to invest in here? Why would I want to bring my money here? So I do think it will have a knock-on effect. I do, but yeah, I just think it's nuts. I think it's bonkers. I really do. Hopefully it's resolved very soon, though. I don't know what do you reckon the solution or the resolution should be for it?
I think they just come to an agreement on where this money needs to go. But Abramovich seems to be kind of being quite stern in his approach. That needs to be to all the victims and not just the Ukrainian ones. And a reminder that he actually didn't. He offered to have that money kind of like go towards those victims. It wasn't forced to. And now I feel like
Yeah.
the UK are forcing him to kind of be like, no, it has to go to these victims or this charity or to this fund, and not to the one that you initially wanted to. So I feel like it's kind of a very poor treatment for someone who's been so kind of invested in the country, has provided a lot to the country. And like you correctly said, I'm not going to talk about where he's acquired this money from, because we all know it's been a bit shady. But in terms of what he's been able to provide to the football club, to the city, to the country, and now he's almost been treated like someone who's like a rat or an absolute traitor to everything. I think it's quite shameful. And as well, like what image are you sending out to people that want to bring money in, invest it, move to the UK, maybe these other kind of rich businessmen or oligarchs? Then it's a very kind of negative image, and it will have a kind of a snowball effect as well.
Yeah. And just to end on it, I do think he'll challenge it. I think you said something quite important, that he's got a legal team around him, I would imagine. And look, I mean, I'll say no more, but I just think when you've got a legal team and you're Roman Abramovich, it's a dangerous game when you go up against someone who potentially has probably one of the best legal teams in the world. Yeah. So if I think he'll challenge it, I think he'll fight it. I think he's that hell bent on it. It's been 3 years in the making. I think he'll fight it. I
do like it when we have these little political conversations on the podcast, so like a bit of a spin-off as well. It's needed at times.
Like I said, we could honestly, I could talk about this for 3 hours. I really could. I'm really passionate about it as well, because I think, seizure of assets is one thing. So once you do that seizure of assets, it's no longer in the control of the person that you've seized it from. That's the whole point of seizing the assets, so they no longer have control over it. Now, if you're forcing a sale, he no longer has control over that money. Now, if he has to sign something over to say that, I relinquish this money to be sent to this place and that place, which I think is the stumbling block, that's the blocker. That's fair enough, but he's well within his rights to say, actually, that is my money. And whether you think legitimately or it's morally wrong that how it's been seized, he still has a right to say where his money goes. That to me, that's where it stops. He's got a right to say where his money goes, and that's it. So I think that's where I think he'll challenge it. And for me, where I think he's right and the government are wrong. And also, I'd love to know where the interest, because it must be sitting in a lovely bank somewhere acquiring loads of interest every single day. I'd love to know who's pocketing that money. That's the bit I want to know. But let's move on before we get sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say you read the book as well. I was going to remind us, so you're probably quite clued up on this topic for sure.
Yeah, and I think when you read that book, you understand. This is a man that came from nothing and built himself up to be what he is today. But he also took some wrong turns. So you can almost kind of see why there was a potential opportunity or reason to seize the club and sell it. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of wrongdoings in doing so. The process doesn't seem correct. So it's we could go down a rabbit hole. We really could. Well, maybe we should do that on one episode. We could do an Abramovich special. See if he's available. Try and call up his reps.
I'll be all for it. Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. Let's switch it back to football. But before we do that, let us know what you think about Abramovich. Also, if you're listening on an audio version or on YouTube, let us know what you think. Does this tarnish his legacy as well at Chelsea? Is this almost overshadowing the Abramovich legacy? Before we move on, what do you think?
At Chelsea? I don't think it's tarnishing his legacy at Chelsea. I think what he's done for Chelsea is apparent. What he's done post-sale or what's happening in terms of the political sphere in the UK, that's another story. And I don't think it's tarnished his legacy at all.
I agree. Let's move on before I say too much and get myself in trouble. Newcastle, 12:30, St James's Park. I'm looking forward to this game. I was going to say it's a big game. It is a big game, but I'm looking forward to the game. I think Newcastle have had a very rocky week, starting with the Sunderland defeat. What's your thoughts going into this game? Eddie Howe's Newcastle, St James's Park, tough ground to go to. 12:30 kickoff as well. Never liked 12:30s.
Yeah, I mean, talking about a record against Newcastle away from home, it's not good. I was chatting to a few of the people at the the charity dinner last night, and they said they hate this fixture because you have to travel the furthest up north. You're up in the gods where you're sat with the away fans, and in recent years we haven't been very successful at St James's Park. If my memory serves right, our last win there was when Reece James scored a double in I think November 2021, and Jorginho penalty.
Yep.
And you just mentioned 12:30 kickoff. I think we've got a really good record in recent seasons, or at least the last year, when it comes to 12:30. I might have jinxed it now by saying that.
It's just that though, isn't it? If you play a 12:30 and you lose, it's your weekend's over. You can't enjoy the weekend. Yeah. So, yeah.
But if you do win it sets you up to enjoy the weekend, and you can watch all the fixtures a bit more, stress-free. And But yeah, I think we've got a good record in recent. I want to say like the last year and a half at least with 12:30 kickoffs. I'll find a stat afterwards and I'll put it on our Twitter. But yeah, it's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a really tough game. I do think we're playing Newcastle at the right time. I think after their League Cup win over Fulham, I think anyone who'd watched that, they saw Tino Livramento went off injured.
Yeah.
And the commentators mentioned that adds to Sven Botman, Dan Burn, who has, I think, a punctured lung and a fractured rib.
Yep.
I think Lewis Hall is also injured as their left back. And they've also got, I think, Nick Pope, who's a doubt. So they've got Aaron Ramsdale as their second choice in goal. So they've got a few injuries. Almost their whole back line is injured, including their goalkeeper. That being said, they've got big talents. You're talking Bruno Guimaraes. We're talking Sandro Tonali, Voltemada, Harvey Barnes, Gordon, and these type of players. They've proved in the past that they can score against us. And this fixture last season, I still remember it really, really vividly when I think Jackson got sent off. And after that game, we were such a doubt whether we'd make top four or not. And then luckily, I think we beat United, then we beat Nottingham Forest. But yeah, it's going to be a tough game, really, really tough game. But I think if we win this one, then we'll really have some momentum going into that fixture against Aston Villa and then the fixture against Bournemouth in the new year as well.
I feel like that Villa game is so this game is obviously equally as important. Every game's important in the league, but I feel like that Villa game is so much more importance to it. This Newcastle game, I feel like it's there for the taking. I think if we put out the right team, you just mentioned a key number of, whole back line, Ramsdale, who we know isn't as good, essentially as Nick Pope in goal. I think this game's there. I really think this game's there for the taking. And the fact that I wouldn't say they struggled against Fulham, but I think they found it difficult in terms of, moments in their game in the League Cup. So I think this game's here for us to take. We rested 11 players against Cardiff City. Maresca said that, a lot of the players that were rested are available. So obviously we won't have Liam Delap. I think Esteval is still going to be out. We knew that from pre-match before Cardiff. So Cole Palmer should be back. Enzo Fernandez, Caicedo got, he's back from his suspension now. Cucurella was suspended on Tuesday. So there's a lot of positives going in our favour. And, the last couple of fixtures at St James's, I think there was a 4-1, November 23, I think it was, where we got hammered by them.
Yeah. I think Reece James got sent off in that one as well.
It was a bad game for us. So I do think this is the game where you want to close that gap on the top three. You want to make sure that, you're closing the gap on City, Liverpool, City, Aston Villa, and then you go into that Villa game the 27th and you've got something to play for then. So my worry is, and I'll ask you this, is does Maresca overthink this game? Because I feel like he will. He's made 11 changes on Tuesday. I feel like this is the game where he's going to look at maybe Garnacho and think, you played well against Cardiff, I'm going to put you in the team. Or the key one I was thinking about was Josh Ashiempong, who I said played very well against Cardiff. Does he come into this team? Do you drop him off the back of that good performance against Cardiff?
Such a tricky one. I think Garnacho, his spot in the starting 11 could be justified, given that I think Esteval is a doubt. He won't feature, and then that frees a spot on the wings, and then maybe you play Palmer, then you play Garnacho and Pedro Neto either side of him, with potentially Joao Pedro as the striker. Ashampong, I think I want to say yes, play him, but then again, I think Fofana and Chalobah form such a good partnership defensively, and then I'm talking was giving you my starting 11 here, but I'd have I'd have Gusto
on screen here now. So
yeah, I'd have Gusto and Reece James in midfield personally, which mean Gusto Ashampong can't start. I actually just found a stat Chelsea have won each of their last 8 Premier League games, kicking off at 12:30 on a Saturday, with only Manchester City enjoying a longer run of successive victories in a specific kickoff slot in a competition, which was 9 from May 2021 to May 2022 to October 2022, which means that if we win tomorrow, then we'll equal that record of Man City's. I feel awful now that I've said this. We're gonna bottle it tomorrow.
The jinx.
Yeah, the jinx.
The jinx.
But yeah, I think Garnacho and Champon is definitely a shout for them to start tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, well. I mean, I've got it on screen here. So
yeah.
Currently we've got Sanchez in goal, which I think is obviously the goalkeeper that we know will be in here. I've gone with Reece James as the right back. I think I want to see Reece James back in his sort of natural habitat of playing as a right back, and we know that he can drop into that midfield, and he probably will still essentially with the inverting into that midfield. I've gone with Chalobah and Fofana as the two in the the centre back roles, with Cucurella obviously returning from his suspension in the League Cup. I've gone with the dynamic duo in the midfield of Enzo Fernandez and Moises Caicedo.
Yes, you're right, because I forgot that Caicedo's back now for Premier League football. So I think why play a fullback in midfield when you can just have Caicedo and Enzo? I think you're right, yeah. But
you say that, but this is where I think Maresca might overthink it, and actually he might rest one of the two. I mean, Enzo did look knackered before the Cardiff game, so I'm glad he didn't play it. But in terms of the two in midfield, I feel like he might overthink it and play Gusto or Achiampong at right back, and then throw Gusto or James into the midfield. And I feel like he might do that. I really do. I don't know why, but I feel like that's his plan. That's his plan.
He could do like a Pedro Neto false 9, or potentially Palmer false 9 and put Enzo as a 10, or you never know with him. It's true.
Yeah. So I've gone with Enzo Caicedo in the midfield. I've agreed with you. I've gone with Pedro Neto, although that's João Pedro. Good spot for myself. So Pedro Neto on the right, with Garnacho on the left, Cole Palmer in the 10. I've actually gone with Mark Gui as the 9. I keep championing him. I think he's a good player. I think I think he needs a run of games. I think we need to see a run of games with Mark Gui in the team to actually assess if he's good enough. I think him coming in, playing against Cardiff or playing against this team, or in and out the team, one, it can't be helping him in terms of progression and confidence and trying to see what he can do. And two, how are we going to judge a player if we've never seen him on a consistent run of games? We said the same about Mykhailo Mudryk a couple of seasons ago. So that would be my lineup, but I know you'd probably change maybe one or two things.
I think I agree actually what you said about Mark Gui. It's a shame because he hasn't really had, I think, 2 or 3 games in a row. It was only last season in the Conference League where he got like that consistent game time. And I've got a scary feeling that if he doesn't get this game time, isn't able to fully prove himself, then when a mega comes next summer, he'll be gone to make room for a mega. So, and you got Quendo also coming in. So I think they'll probably try to free up some spaces in the squad. But no, I agree with your 11. I still think maybe João Pedro, given it's a big game, and hopefully like a bit like when we played Spurs, he can just pop up at the right time. But I do kind of think if the things aren't going to plan, maybe it's 0-0 at halftime, make changes, bring Gui on, bring potentially Andre Santos on, bring Champong on, make tweaks that might kind of work to our advantage, but don't wait till the 70th minute, the 75th minute. But yeah, the only change I would make would be João Pedro as the striker. And I think the fact he was rested against Cardiff is an indication that he'll start tomorrow and Gui will be on the bench.
Yeah, it's a good shout. I want to quickly talk about Cole Palmer as well, because he's obviously looked sensational against Everton last week. I think it's going to take him a while to get back to his full potential with the back of the injuries and then the delayed injury with the broken toe. But I feel like with Cole Palmer sitting in that sort of 10, why I like him in that role is because he loves to sort of drop into that sort of space between Enzo, Caicedo, make something happen. And I think we said it in the last episode, he's one of those players that you could probably put him in that 3, you'd maybe put Caicedo in the base of the midfield, have Palmer on the one side with Enzo, both of them pushing up, and you've got Caicedo as your base. You're literally your defensive midfielder in there, and then have Enzo and Palmer playing as the 2 going forward, sort of intricating between the 2. But
it's a shout,
what's your thoughts on Palmer? He's got to sort of get back to the form that we know he can.
Yeah, I mean, Maresca seems to be managing his minutes a bit more carefully now because that groin injury isn't fully recovered. Supposedly, he wasn't even in the matchday squad for Atalanta. He wasn't even in the matchday squad for Cardiff. So maybe right now, given the current schedule, he can only play one game a week, and we'd rather keep him for these big Premier League games: Everton, Newcastle, hopefully Villa. He'll be able to play a part in that one.
Yeah.
And like you correctly said, I feel like he's got that ability to almost sit back, play as probably the closest midfielder to the back line. And I saw that at times at Everton. He was actually sitting alongside a Chalobah and Fofana pinging passes, and that gives maybe a bit more freedom to an Enzo or a Caicedo. But where we see Palmer play his best football is around the penalty box and scoring goals like he did against Everton. So hopefully he's back to his best in shortly, because we're going to need him in the new year, especially. I think we've got Man City, I think, our first game of the new year. So we're going to need him in those big Premier League fixtures coming up as well.
Yeah, and just a quick word on Garnacho, Neto, what you expecting from those two. Obviously, if they do start, you'd essentially like to think Garnacho would be on the left, Neto on the right. But the good thing about them is they can both actually swap and play both flanks.
They've been brilliant. I think Garnacho, I'm happy with how he responded, because he missed, I think, like a hat-trick of chances against Everton. And then he comes on off the bench against Cardiff and takes his chances quite well. And I forget of Garnacho because we've been watching him on our televisions for our last couple of years, but he is only 21. He is still very, very young, so he will improve, he will learn. But I feel like he's slowly winning me over, because we were both very reluctant at first when he joined in the summer. We didn't like his attitude. We didn't maybe like the reasons why he was joining Chelsea. But he's slowly winning me over. But Pedro Neto, for me, top scorer for Chelsea this season. Proving that he's putting those fitness issues that he was struggling with at Wolves behind him. So I think those two, for me, are the starting wingers against Newcastle. But I just want to see more from Gittins and George, because if there's a bit of fatigue in those two, in Neto and Garnacho, you want to have that winger that can come off the bench and make an impact. And I just don't see that yet in George and Gittins, whereas Garnacho and Neto were able to do that in the Welsh capital on Tuesday night.
Yeah, I think George might. I mean, his representatives have come out, haven't they? Said they're not happy with the amount of minutes he's been playing over this season. So I think, and we have to remember that Fulham move deadline day almost went through. It was only because of time and paperwork why I don't think it went through in the end. But I think Gittins 100%. I think he's one of those players that can take on a player. He's got the ability to. I said it on Wednesday or Thursday. You know, he's got he almost really reminds me of Noni Madueke, which is so stupid because we've sold him and we've brought in a replica that is exactly the same as Noni Madueke. Can take on a player. That delivery into the box is just not there. You know, the delivery, the execution into the box, penetrating something. You know, taking on the defender and crossing it in. It's just not there with him. And I think, why did we sell Noni Madueke to bring in, 2.0, and it's still the same? So I agree with you. There's got to be more from Madueke and Andre Santos as well. I know not to sort of bash at all the players, but I feel like with Santos, again, didn't do much wrong on Tuesday night, but also didn't really impact the game to the point where, things are staying in my mind and I'm thinking about, if he comes on against Newcastle, he's going to be a game changer for us. I don't see that with him. So I need to see more from him as well.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up, just a quick question. 2 players, I believe, if my memory serves me right, haven't scored for Chelsea in our current match day, in our current squad. Who are they? Not just this season, across their whole time at Chelsea. And it's not Gusto, because he's scored now, hasn't he?
He scored 2 against Everton, 2 separate occasions, I think. Joel Heto, has he got a goal?
Yes, that's one. Yeah, he hasn't scored. And the other one's injured. I'll give you a clue. He's only featured in the Club World Cup. Asugo,
yeah. So yeah, I mean, but to add to that as well, I don't know if there was a stat that you got to see where I think majority of our goals have come from defence midfield. I think we've got 1 goal from our strikers. So it tells you that, more needs to happen in the attacking areas. And it goes back to the Gittins point, the Garnacho misses against Everton last Saturday. Things have to happen. We're creating chances, but we're not scoring the goals. And it was mentioned in the press conference today, that Maresca needs to try and get the best out of the attackers.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really had time to speak about the Everton game, but that game could have finished like 3-3 or 4-4. because
Oh,
both
yeah.
teams had so many chances, and I think they hit the post. Everton, I think Ndiaye and Grealish had big chances. So yeah, I think we kind of escaped with one there, but also us, we were just not clinical enough. The Garnacho chances, but yeah, overall, I think you would have taken a 2-0 and a clean sheet before kickoff. So a good win for us, but I really hope we kind of have that same kind of performance, that same kind of ability to keep a clean sheet, and play and play some ugly football, but still come out with a win against Aston Villa and Bournemouth as well.
Yeah. I think the Dewsbury Hall sub against Everton changed things for them. I think, he clearly wasn't fit, but he clearly did not want to miss that game. Ex-manager twice, Leicester and Chelsea. He wanted to come back to Stamford Bridge. He wanted to try and put in a performance, but you could just see early into that game he wasn't fit. And I think that substitution, I can't remember who they brought on. I feel like it was Alcaraz. I think they brought on, and it didn't really work with him. And I think I've always said this. I mean, I know a lot of Evertonians from being up here in Liverpool, but if they had a striker, I think they would be very, very, very. I mean, they're doing well this season, but I think they'd be doing amazing this season. So I think you're right. It could have been a 3-3, 3-2 game had they got a striker that was not Barry or Beto up front. I think they'd be giving us a lot more problems last Saturday.
Yeah, he got a really good reception, Dewsbury Hall, from the Chelsea fans when he came off. Maybe it was more relief from the Chelsea fans given how good he's been. But no, he got a really good reception. I think James was the first one to check if he was okay as well. But yeah, I think he only stayed a season, but it's done well for us. But I think going back to what we said, like Dewsbury Hall, these players, they only stayed for one season. Joao Felix only stayed for 6 months. So I think if Gittins doesn't continue to perform, he could be shown the door in January or next summer, and we'll bring someone else in who we think is a bigger talent. So yeah, I think time now at Chelsea, you're only given a season, you're only given 6 months. You're not given the 2 seasons that we used to see under the Abramovich era as well.
Yeah, it's not looking good for Gittins or Mark Gui. Let's just round off before we go on predictions for Newcastle. So tough one. Obviously, we've lost the last 3, I think, or maybe at least the last 2. I think it's the last 3 at St James's. I think 2 have resulted in a red card. I think Nicholas Jackson and Reece James.
And then I think the year before that we lost 1-0, and it was Willock who scored, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So it's that weird game I think right before the World Cup break.
That was it.
So yeah, not bad record, really bad record, but something I've got a bit of hope tomorrow. I feel like I was quite pessimistic against Everton. I'm quite optimistic for Newcastle, but I really don't want that optimism to kind of translate into like cocky arrogance. Yeah, but I'm going to go 1-1. I feel, and then I'll be like, I'm going to go into this game thinking we're going to get a draw, and if we get a win, then I'll be really happy. But I think 1-1. I think we'll show really good signs, but I think somehow we'll give away some sloppy goal, like Tonali or Joe Linton will score. But yeah, let's say 1-1.
I think it would be a difficult game for us. I think it's a game where Newcastle will probably have the better chances, but we'll probably hopefully have something just a bit more in our locker on the day just to get something over the line. I think it's going to be a low scoring game. I'm going to go 1-0 Chelsea.
I'll take that.
Yeah, I think it'll be. Again, it's really hard to understand what Maresca is going to put out against Newcastle, but if he picks the right team and we see Cole Palmer, the Cole Palmer that we know, we'll get chances. It's just if we convert them, and I think that's the worry. We've got to get the chances, but convert them is more important. So for me, 1-0. I'll take a 1-0. 1-0.
I'll take it. It'll be a Navi watch, but I'll take it, and safe travels or all the Chelsea fans. Yep. It's going to be a very early start for them tomorrow morning, 12:30 kickoff, going up to Newcastle, or very late departure tonight, whichever way you see it. But yeah,
there'll be wives around the country in London angry a couple of days before Christmas, all husbands, angry that their other halves are travelling the other side of the country to go and watch 90 minutes of football. So let's hope it's worthwhile in terms of the results tomorrow. Theo, as always, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure, of course. We'll talk before, but we'll do it for the podcast. I hope you have a good Christmas as well.
Appreciate it.
And all the Chelsea fans as well that's been listening up until whenever we started this podcast. Make sure you have a good Christmas, good break, drink in good moderation. Don't end up like Theo with your hazy eyes after a couple of glasses of red wine. But yeah, hope everyone has a good Christmas. We'll be back in between Christmas as well, so make sure you hit your notification bell. Linktree link is in the description as well. Enjoy.